My stepmother made me pay rent as a teen while her kids lived for free. Now she's begging to move into my mansion. The day my father introduced me to Vanessa, she smiled so warmly that her eyes crinkled at the corners like folded silk. She squeezed my shoulders and said, "Lily, I just know we're going to be the best of friends." I was 13, awkward, and still raw from my mother's death 2 years earlier. I wanted to believe her. Behind Vanessa stood her children, Tori, 15 and glowing with confidence, and Brandon, 14 with a permanent smirk. They looked polished, put together in a way I'd forgotten families could be. My father beamed at them, at Vanessa, at this ready-made happiness that seemed to materialize from nowhere after years of quiet grief in our house. "They'll be like the siblings you never had," Dad whispered to me later that night, his eyes bright with hope I hadn't seen since before Mom's cancer diagnosis. I nodded, desperate to support whatever had brought light back into his life, even as something cold settled in my stomach. 3 months after the wedding, I understood what that cold feeling had been. Warning. Instinct. The truth hiding behind Vanessa's silk-crinkled eyes. The first time I caught it was when Dad left for a business trip. The minute his car pulled out of the driveway, Vanessa's smile vanished like it had been wiped away with a cloth. She turned to me, her voice dropping an octave. "Lily, darling, would you mind taking out the trash? And while you're at it, the bathroom needs cleaning." I didn't mind helping. What struck me was how she turned to Tori immediately after and said, "Honey, why don't you relax and watch that show you love? You've had such a long week with cheer practice." Over the next few months, a pattern emerged with the stealth of a predator. When Dad was home, we were a perfect blended family, meals together, weekend outings, board games in the living room. But the moment he stepped out, the house transformed into a kingdom with a strict hierarchy. Tori and Brandon at the top, treated like visiting royalty. Me at the bottom, increasingly treated like staff. "Dad, I tried once when I was 14. Vanessa makes me do all the chores when you're not home." His forehead creased with concern, but before he could respond, Vanessa appeared as if summoned, her hand sliding around his waist. "Oh, Robert," she laughed lightly, "Lily's just not used to having responsibilities. I'm trying to teach all the kids the importance of pitching in. Tori and Brandon have their chores too." Dad relaxed instantly. "That's good, Van. Structure is important." What my father never saw was that Tori's chore was organizing her own closet while I scrubbed toilets. Brandon's responsibility was taking out the trash once a week, while I cooked dinner when Vanessa didn't feel like it. The day after my 15th birthday, Vanessa cornered me in the kitchen. Dad had just left for work, and Tori and Brandon were still upstairs getting ready for school. "Lily," she said, voice honey-sweet but eyes cold, "your father and I have been talking. We think it's time you learned about the real world." My stomach nodded. I clutched my backpack, strapped tighter. "Starting next month, you'll be paying rent for your room. Just $200 a month to start. It'll teach you responsibility." The room tilted slightly. "Rent? But I'm 15. Vanessa's smile thinned. "And? When I was 15, I was already working. Your father agrees you're too coddled. This will prepare you for life." "Are Tori and Brandon paying rent too?" I already knew the answer. Don't be ridiculous. They're still adjusting to a new home, a new life. They need stability. That night, I heard Vanessa in the bedroom with my dad, her voice soft and concerned. "I'm worried about Lily, Robert." She seemed so entitled when I mentioned contributing to the household. Almost ungrateful. My father's murmured response was too quiet to hear, but the next morning at breakfast, he wouldn't meet my eyes. I found a job that weekend stocking shelves at the local grocery store after school. The manager only hired me because he'd know my mother. 3 weeks later, I handed Vanessa my first $200, watching as she tucked it into her purse without a word of thanks. That same afternoon, she took Tori shopping and came home with bags from stores I'd never even been allowed to enter. Brandon got the new gaming system he'd been begging for. I got silence and another list of chores. By 16, my life had become a careful balancing act. School from 8 to 3, work from 4 to 8, homework until midnight. Weekends spent picking up extra shifts or doing odd jobs for neighbors to make my rent payments, which had mysteriously increased to $300 because utilities have gone up, Lily. Meanwhile, Tori got a car for her 17th birthday, a car my father had helped her pick out, and Vanessa had tied a giant red bow around. Brandon joined an expensive travel soccer team that took him across the state every other weekend, Vanessa and my father cheering from the sidelines. I wasn't invited to the games. Someone had to work after all. One Thursday night, while washing dishes after a dinner I'd cooked but barely eaten because I had to leave for my tutoring job, I heard Vanessa in the living room. "She's just so different from I too," she told my father, her voice carrying clearly to the kitchen. "Always so serious, so difficult. I try so hard with her, Robert, but sometimes I wonder if she's just determined to be unhappy no matter what we do." I gripped the sponge until soap bubbles squeezed between my fingers. That night, staring at the ceiling of the room I paid to sleep in, I made a promise to myself. This would not be my forever. I would find a way out. And when I did, I would never, ever look back. I just had to survive 2 more years. By 17, my room had become both prison and sanctuary. The walls, still painted the lavender I'd chosen at 11, felt increasingly foreign, like they belonged to someone else's childhood. I'd covered them with college brochures, scholarship applications, and a hand-drawn calendar marking days until graduation. 342 boxes, each one a breath closer to freedom. My daily routine had calcified into something brutal yet necessary. 5 a.m. alarm for early morning study before anyone else woke up. School until 3. Rush to my first job at the grocery store until 7. Home to gulp down whatever leftovers remained, if any, then out again to tutor middle schoolers in math until 9. Homework until my eyes burned. Sleep. Repeat. Weekends meant double shifts at the cafe downtown where the manager, Miss Chun, slipped me extra tips and day-old pastries, pretending not to notice when I dozed off during slow periods. "You're working too hard," she told me one Sunday, sliding a cup of strong black coffee across the counter. "Your mother would be worried." I nodded, throat tight. Mom had been gone 5 years, but Miss Chun still spoke of her in present tense, as if her concern existed somewhere outside of time. "I'm saving," I said simply, "for after." Ms. Chun understood after meant graduation meant escape. She squeezed my shoulder and added an extra muffin to my takeaway bag. At home, the contrast between my existence and my step-siblings' lives had become almost comical in its stark unfairness. That spring, Tori received a brand new laptop for getting AB average. "She's really applying herself, Lily," Dad explained when he caught my expression, while Brandon got private driving lessons for his 16th birthday. The weekend they took Brandon to pick out his first car, a used but immaculate Subaru, I found myself alone in the quiet house, sitting on the kitchen floor, calculating exactly how many more dollars I needed for first and last month's rent on the cheapest studio apartment I could find across town. I still had $1,200 to go. The number felt insurmountable. That night, Vanessa found me at the kitchen table, surrounded by scholarship essays. "Working on school things?" she asked, her voice sweet. Dad must have been nearby. "Scholarship applications." Her perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. "You know, if you spent half as much time contributing around here as you do on those applications, we might actually feel appreciated." I looked up slowly, meeting her gaze directly, something I rarely risked anymore. "I pay rent. I clean. I cook when you ask. What else would you like me to contribute?" Her smile never wavered, but her eyes hardened to glass. "Gratitude, Lily. After everything your father and I have done for you." From the hallway, my father's voice. "Everything okay in here?" Vanessa's hand landed on my shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to warn. "Just girl talk, Robert. Lily's so focused on college, I hardly get time with her anymore." That pressure on my shoulder, that lie delivered with perfect maternal concern, something inside me finally snapped. Not in a dramatic way. In a quiet way, like a thread worn so thin that its breaking makes no sound at all. I decided that night I wouldn't wait until graduation. I would leave on my 18th birthday, 3 months before the school year ended. I'd take online classes to finish, work full-time, live in my car if I had to. The next morning, I withdrew my entire savings, $4,326, and opened a new account at a different bank. I began selling everything I could part with. Books, clothes, the tablet I'd saved for over a year to buy myself. I took on a third job delivering food on weekend nights, sleeping only 4 hours between shifts. My 18th birthday fell on a Tuesday. I woke before dawn and packed everything that mattered into 2 duffel bags: clothes, documents, photos of my mother, and a small box containing the only jewelry she left me. I wrote a brief note to my father, then slipped it under his bedroom door while he and Vanessa still slept. Dad, I'm 18 now, an adult. I found my own place, and I'm moving out. I'll finish school online.
Please don't worry about me.
Lily. I left my house key on the kitchen counter and walked out the front door, just as the sun was rising. I'd made it halfway down the driveway when I heard footsteps behind me.
So, that's it?
You're just leaving? Vanessa stood on the porch in her silk robe, arms crossed against the morning chill. I turned, surprised not by her presence, but by the small flicker of satisfaction in her expression. As if this was exactly what she'd been engineering all along. Yes, I said simply. She descended the steps slowly, stopping a few feet away. In the early light, I could see the fine lines around her mouth, the careful application of her nighttime skincare routine. You know, she said, voice lowered though no one else was awake to hear, I always knew you'd do this. Just abandon your father after everything he's sacrificed for you. The familiar stab of guilt pierced me, but I pushed it aside. He has you now. And Tori and Brandon. His perfect family. At least they appreciate what they have, she said, her smile turning cold. Let's see how long you last out there without a handout. The real world isn't kind to entitled little girls. I shouldered my bags and met her gaze one last time. I've been living in the real world since I was 15, Vanessa. You made sure of that. The look of surprise that flickered across her face was worth every double shift, every sleepless night, every dollar I'd scraped together. I turned and walked away, not toward the bus stop as I'd planned, but in the opposite direction. I would take the long way around. I would walk the extra miles. Because for the first time in 5 years, every step was finally taking me away from her and towards something that was entirely my own. The studio apartment I'd found online looked nothing like its photos. The carpet, advertised as neutral beige, was stained in patterns I didn't want to decipher. The kitchenette's single burner worked sporadically, and the bathroom's sink leaked continuously, creating a melodic drip that punctuated my nights. But it was mine. All mine. The first month's rent and security deposit had nearly wiped out my savings, but I'd managed to buy a thin mattress from a secondhand store and a folding table that doubled as my desk. College acceptance letters arrived at my new address, 5 out of the 12 I'd applied to. I spread them across my folding table, calculating scholarship amounts against tuition costs, weighing proximity against opportunity. In the end, I chose State University, not because it was the best school, but because it offered work-study positions that would cover part of my living expenses. That decision, practical rather than passionate, became the first of many that would shape my adult life. The summer between high school and college disappeared in a blur of shifts. I picked up every hour I could at the cafe, delivered food until my car's suspension groaned in protest, and started taking online graphic design gigs after noticing a flyer at the community center. My natural eye for design turned out to be my most valuable asset. I could create logos and simple websites faster than most of my competitors, undercutting their prices while still delivering quality work. By the time fall semester started, I had enough saved for textbooks and a laptop. What I didn't have was enough for housing. You could commute, my academic advisor suggested during orientation, frowning at my financial aid package. It's 40 minutes each way, but I'll figure something out, I interrupted, not wanting to explain that commuting would mean choosing between gas money and food. What I figured out wasn't pretty. I slept in my car 4 nights a week, parking in different lots around campus to avoid security's attention. I showered at the student gym before dawn, before anyone could notice the same girl appearing with a full backpack every morning. I found a storage locker where I kept most of my clothes and books, carrying only what I needed each day. The routine was grueling but finite. Just until the end of semester, I whispered to myself on particularly cold nights, huddled under 2 blankets in my reclined driver's seat. Just until I save enough. My sophomore year brought an unexpected turning point. A design professor paired us with local businesses needing website makeovers, and I was assigned to a struggling marketing firm owned by Elena Vasquez, a fierce 40-something woman who'd built her business from nothing after immigrating from Colombia. "This is good," she said bluntly, reviewing my initial mock-ups. "But it's safe. Show me what you'd do if you weren't trying to please me." I stayed up all night redesigning her entire brand strategy, pushing beyond the assignment's requirements. When I presented it the next day, Elena's eyes widened slightly, the only indication she was impressed. 2 weeks later, she offered me an internship. 3 months after that, she promoted me to part-time junior designer with a salary that finally allowed me to rent a room in a shared apartment with other students. "You work like someone's chasing you," Elena observed one evening as we finished a project. "Like you're afraid of something catching up." I looked up from my screen, startled by her accuracy. "Maybe I am." She didn't press, but the next day she introduced me to her brother, Miguel, who ran a venture capital firm specializing in tech startups. "My prodigy," she called me, a term that made me uncomfortable but opened doors I hadn't known existed. At 22, I graduated with honors and a job offer from a prestigious agency in San Francisco. The salary they proposed made me lightheaded, more money than I'd ever imagined earning, especially so young. I turned it down. Instead, I took out a small business loan, combining it with the savings I'd accumulated through Elena's connections and freelance work. With Jessica, a programmer I'd met through Miguel's network, I launched Novagram, a digital marketing firm targeting sustainable businesses that needed both design and strategy. The first year nearly broke us. Jessica and I worked from her studio apartment, sleeping in shifts, subsisting on instant ramen and determination. We pitched to everyone who would listen and many who wouldn't. We redesigned our business model 3 times. We came within $200 of bankruptcy in month 8. Then a pitch to an eco-friendly clothing brand went viral, increasing their sales by 400% in 2 weeks. Suddenly, clients weren't just responding to our cold calls, they were calling us. By 24, we had an office with a staff of 6. By 26, we'd expanded to 3 cities with specialized teams for different industries. Money that had once seemed impossible to imagine now flowed through my life, and I approached it with the caution of someone who knew its absence. I invested. I saved. I created contingency plans for my contingency plans. At 28, I saw the market shifting. Social media platforms were evolving, and traditional marketing approaches were becoming less effective. Instead of fighting the change, I embraced it, developing an app that helped businesses navigate the new landscape. Vox Vista launched quietly, with little fanfare. 6 months later, it had over 1 million users. A year after that, we went public. The morning of the IPO, I stood in my hotel room overlooking San Francisco Bay, watching the financial channels track our stock's meteoric rise. My phone buzzed continuously with congratulations, questions, and interview requests. I silenced it and pressed my forehead against the cool glass. At 32, I was worth more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. The business magazines called me a visionary and an overnight success, a phrase that always made Jessica and me laugh until we cried. 10 years of grinding, of sleeping in cars and skipping meals, of working until my vision blurred. 10 years of building something from nothing. There was nothing overnight about it. The realtor called that afternoon about a property I'd inquired about, a modern glass and brick mansion perched on cliffs overlooking the Pacific, with soaring ceilings and walls of windows that made the ocean look like it was part of the house itself. "It's at the very top of your budget," he warned. I thought of the room I'd once paid rent for, of Vanessa's cold smile, of my father's averted eyes. "I'll take it," I said. I loved mornings in my cliffside sanctuary. Each dawn painted the ocean in different hues, sometimes silver blue, other times deep indigo or fiery amber. This particular Tuesday, I sat on my terrace with coffee in hand, barefoot despite the cool marble beneath my feet, watching dolphins arc through distant waves. My phone buzzed, probably Jessica calling about our upcoming board meeting. I glanced down, ready to silence it, when an unfamiliar number with my hometown area code flashed on the screen. My finger hovered over the decline button. No one from there had my number anymore. Not even my father, who'd emailed twice after I left, first angry, then concerned, before falling silent when I didn't respond. Curiosity won. Hello. Is this Lily? A woman's voice, familiar yet strange. Lily Harmon? My maiden name. A name I'd legally changed after Vox Vista went public, partly for privacy, partly to shed the final remnant of my past. Who's asking? My voice remained neutral, professional. It's Vanessa, your stepmother. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattering on the marble. Hot liquid splashed my bare feet, but I barely felt it. How did you get this number? Asked, surprised by my own calm. It wasn't easy. She laughed lightly, the same musical sound I remembered from when she'd charmed my father. I've been trying to reach you for months. One of Brandon's friends works at a tech magazine and recognized you in a photo. Said you'd become some sort of millionaire app designer. Of course. The Forbes profile last year. I'd allowed a rare interview, a decision I now regretted. What do you want, Vanessa? A pause then. I was hoping we could meet. To catch up, maybe reconnect. I've been thinking about you. After 15 years of silence? Things haven't been easy, Lily. After your father died. My father died? The question escaped before I could stop it, revealing a vulnerability I'd promised myself never to show again. Another pause. 2 years ago. Heart attack. I thought. I assumed someone would have told you. I gripped the terrace railing, steadying myself against sudden vertigo. My father finished? Without my knowing? Without a chance to what? Forgive him? Confront him? Both seemed equally impossible now. I'm sorry, Vanessa continued, her voice softening. I would have contacted you for the funeral, but no one knew how to reach you. No one had tried, I thought bitterly. Not even an obituary search would have been difficult. Why are you calling now, Vanessa? Asked again, regaining control. Her sigh crackled through the connection. I need to see you. It's complicated. Family matters. We're not family. Please, Lily. Just a coffee? I'll come to you, wherever you are. Something in her voice, a desperation I'd never heard before, made me hesitate. Perhaps it was morbid curiosity. Perhaps some childish part of me wanted her to see what I'd become without her, without any of them.
Fine.
One meeting. I gave her my business address rather than my home, a high-rise in downtown San Francisco where my company occupied 3 floors. Let her come to my territory, where the Lily Harmon she'd tried to break was now Lily Chun, CEO and majority shareholder of a multi-billion-dollar company. The call ended. I stared at the shattered porcelain at my feet, at the coffee spreading across imported Italian marble, and couldn't bring myself to care. Vanessa never showed up for our scheduled meeting. 3 days passed without contact. I'd almost convinced myself she'd never call again when my home security system pinged on a Sunday afternoon. Visitor at the main gate, announced the smooth AI voice throughout the house. I pulled up the security feed on my tablet and froze. There stood Vanessa, her honey blonde hair now streaked with gray, but still expertly styled. She wore a beige trench coat that had seen better days and clutched a leather suitcase that looked expensive but worn. Behind her waited a taxi, meter running. I stared at the image, calculating the odds she'd tracked down my private residence. Almost impossible unless she'd hired someone. The thought was disturbing. Through the intercom, I heard her speak to the security panel. Hello? I'm looking for the owner. I'm a family friend. I watched her shift uncomfortably, glancing back at the waiting taxi. After a moment's hesitation, she added, Actually, I'm looking for Lily Chen's assistant. I was told she works here. My breath caught. She didn't know. She hadn't connected CEO Lily Chen with the stepdaughter she'd tormented. She thought I was someone's employee, perhaps a housekeeper or personal assistant to the wealthy owner. A plan formed instantly, wicked and satisfying. I wouldn't correct her assumption.
Not yet.
I pressed the intercom. This is the residence manager. How can I help you? Relief washed over her face. Oh, thank goodness. I'm Vanessa Harmon, a family connection of Ms. Chen's assistant, Lily. I really need to speak with her. It's urgent. Ms. Harmon, Ms. Chen's staff don't receive personal visitors at her residence. I suggest you contact the company offices. Please. Vanessa's voice cracked. I tried there. They said she wasn't available. I don't have anywhere else to go. I zoomed the camera in on her face. The perfect makeup I remembered had been applied less skillfully now, settling into deeper lines around her mouth and eyes. Behind the practiced charm lurked something I recognized immediately. Desperation. Your taxi is waiting, I pointed out. She glanced back, then leaned closer to the camera. I can't afford to keep it. I spent my last cash getting here. The admission visibly pained her. Vanessa, who'd once flaunted her designer purses and jewelry, now couldn't afford a taxi fare. Curiosity, perhaps mixed with something darker, made my decision. Send the taxi away. I'll have someone collect you. I watched her pay the driver, then stand alone at my gate, suitcase by her side, shoulders slightly hunched against the coastal wind. There was something performative in her vulnerability, a calculated fragility I recognized from years of watching her manipulate my father. I sent my groundskeeper to bring her to the guest house, instructing him to tell her that Miss Chen's assistant will speak with her shortly. Through the security feeds, I watched Vanessa enter the guest house, itself larger than most people's homes, her eyes widening at the soaring ceilings and ocean views. She ran a finger along a marble countertop, opened the refrigerator to find it fully stocked, tested the softness of the living room sofa, making herself at home already. Some things never changed. I would let her settle in before I revealed myself. Let her believe she'd found a safe harbor, just as I once believed our home was mine. 3 hours passed before I made my way to the guest house. I'd changed into a simple black dress and heels, the kind of outfit that spoke of quiet wealth rather than flashy success. My assistant had called to remind me about tomorrow's investor meeting, and I'd briefly considered canceling this confrontation altogether. But some ghosts needed facing. Through the security feed, I watched Vanessa prowl the guest house, opening cabinets, examining framed artwork, even trying on a robe left for guests in the master bathroom. She'd made herself a drink from the bar and was now sitting on the terrace, gazing at the same ocean view I treasured each morning. I entered without knocking. The electronic lock disengaged with a soft click, and I stepped inside, my heels silent against the plush carpet. Vanessa didn't hear me until I reached the terrace door. She turned, expectant smile already in place, the smile that had once charmed my father, the smile that had hidden so much cruelty. The smile froze, then collapsed entirely. Lily. Her voice was barely audible. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Hello, Vanessa. She set her drink down with a shaking hand, sloshing expensive scotch onto the glass table. But they said, I thought, you're the assistant. No, I replied simply. I'm Lily Chen. This is my home. Her eyes darted around the expansive property visible from the terrace, the main house perched dramatically on the cliff edge, the infinity pool reflecting the late afternoon sun, the manicured gardens stretching toward the private beach below. You own all this? Her voice had regained some strength, but a tremor remained. Yes. She stood suddenly, smoothing her wrinkled blouse with nervous hands. Lily, my goodness. You've done so well for yourself. The familiar charm switched on like a light, her posture straightening, eyes softening. I always knew you had potential. Your father would be so proud. The mention of my father stung, but I kept my expression neutral. Why are you here, Vanessa? She hesitated, taking a small step forward. Can we sit? Talk like family should. We're not family, I reminded her for the second time. But yes, we can sit. I chose a chair opposite hers, maintaining distance. Up close, I could see how time had changed her. The golden beauty that had once dazzled my father had faded. Stress lines bracketed her mouth. Her designer clothes, once impeccable, showed signs of wear. A missing button here, a frayed edge there. "Well," she began, voice artificially bright, "life has been challenging since Robert passed." "I'm sorry about my father," I said and meant it. "I wish I'd known." She waved a hand dismissively. "You were busy building your empire, clearly. He understood why you left, toward the end." I doubted that very much, but let it pass. "That doesn't explain why you're at my gate with a suitcase, Vanessa." Her face crumpled slightly, the mask slipping. "Things have been difficult. The house, we lost it last year. Foreclosure." She took a shuddering breath. "After your father died, I discovered he'd remortgaged everything for Tori's graduate school and Brandon's business venture. Neither panned out. The debts were overwhelming. And your children couldn't help." I kept my voice neutral, though something sharp and satisfied unfurled in my chest. Vanessa laughed bitterly. "Tori married an investment banker who turned out to be terrible with his own investments. They're living with his parents in Connecticut. Brandon." She paused, swallowing hard. "Brandon hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. Said I enabled his failures by never making him face consequences." The irony wasn't lost on me. "I see. I've been staying with friends, but you can only impose so long." She leaned forward, eyes suddenly intense. "When I saw that article about you, I couldn't believe it. It felt like fate. A sign." "A sign of what?" "That maybe we could start fresh. That I could help you somehow." I raised an eyebrow. "Help me? Family connections are important in business, aren't they? I could be a hostess for your events, manage your household staff. I've always had an eye for interior design." She gestured around the guest house, already reimagining it as her domain. "Vanessa," I interrupted calmly, "I have staff who handle those things. Professionals." "But they're not family," she insisted, leaning forward. "I know I wasn't always the stepmother you needed. I was under tremendous pressure back then, trying to blend two families. I never meant to make you feel less than." The lie was so brazen, so complete, that for a moment I could only stare. Had she truly convinced herself of this alternate reality? Or did she think, after 15 years, I would have forgotten? "You made me pay rent at 15, I said quietly. "You excluded me from family activities. You convinced my father I was difficult and ungrateful while your children received everything without working for any of it." She flinched but recovered quickly. "You're remembering it through a child's eyes, Lily. It wasn't like that." It was exactly like that. A tense silence stretched between us. In the distance, waves crashed against the cliffs, a rhythm that usually calmed me but now only heightened my awareness of every heartbeat, every breath. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears, perfectly timed, just as they used to be when my father questioned her decisions. "I have nowhere else to go, Lily. Just until I get back on my feet. Please." Something twisted in my chest, not sympathy, but recognition. I'd been homeless once too, sleeping in my car during freshman year, showering at the campus gym before anyone could notice. The difference was, no one had engineered my circumstances but Vanessa herself. I stood and walked to the wall of windows, gazing out at the ocean turning gold in the sunset light. "I'm having dinner in the main house at 7. You're welcome to join me. We can discuss arrangements." Her face lit with hope. "Thank you, Lily. You won't regret this." As I left, I heard her frantically unzipping her suitcase, no doubt searching for something presentable to wear to dinner in a mansion she already imagined herself living in permanently. She had no idea what was coming next. Vanessa arrived at the main house 5 minutes early, wearing a black cocktail dress that had once been expensive, but now showed subtle signs of age, a slightly frayed hemline, a missing sequin near the shoulder. She'd reapplied her makeup and styled her hair, the transformation reminding me of how she'd once charmed my father into believing whatever version of reality she crafted. "This is extraordinary," she breathed, taking in the soaring ceilings of my entryway, the custom lighting illuminating original artwork, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Pacific as if it were another room of the house. "Thank you," I said simply, leading her to the dining room where my housekeeper had set an elegant table for two. Vanessa's eyes widened at the place settings, my grandmother's silver, crystal glasses, fine china. "You've done well for yourself," she repeated, as if still processing the extent of my success. I gestured for her to sit. "Wine,
Please.
her smile wobbled slightly as she watched me pour. "Lily, I can't tell you how grateful I am. This second chance means everything." I didn't correct her assumption. Instead, I raised my glass in a toast. To unexpected reunions. Dinner proceeded with careful conversation. Vanessa asked about my company, nodding enthusiastically, though I could tell she understood little about technology or venture capital. She sprinkled in anecdotes about Tori and Brandon that painted their failures as temporary setbacks rather than consequences of their upbringing. Over dessert, a delicate chocolate souffle that my chef had prepared, Vanessa finally broached the subject I'd been waiting for. "So," she began, voice casual but eyes sharp with calculation, "I was thinking I could take the guest house, at least to start. It's perfect, really, close enough that I could help with whatever you need, but you'd still have your privacy." I set down my spoon. "Walk with me." Confused but eager to please, she followed me through the house to my office, a space designed to impress, with awards displayed on illuminated shelves and a wall of windows overlooking the ocean. On another wall hung framed magazine covers and articles chronicling my company's rise. I watched her eyes land on the Forbes profile, Lily Chen, the visionary behind Vox Vista, and then drift to a shadow box containing my first employee badge, a napkin with our original logo sketch, and a small brass key. "What's the key from?" she asked, pointing to the shadow box. "My first apartment, the one I rented at 18 when I left your house." Her smile faltered. "Ancient history. Not to me." I moved to my desk and pressed a button. A hidden panel in the bookshelf slid open, revealing a wall safe. I entered the combination, aware of Vanessa watching intently as I removed a small wooden box. "I keep the things that matter here," I explained, opening the box to reveal a few pieces of my mother's jewelry and a folded piece of paper. I took out the paper and handed it to her. She unfolded it cautiously. "A rent receipt? I don't understand." "The first rent you made me pay. $300. I was 15. Her cheeks flushed. "Lily, that was a life lesson." I finished for her. "That's what you called it then. And you were right. It taught me that in this world, you can't rely on family. You can only rely on yourself." I took the receipt back, returning it carefully to its place. That lesson built this house. It built my company. It made me who I am. Understanding dawned in Vanessa's eyes, a slow-spreading realization that this dinner wasn't what she'd thought. "You're not going to let me stay." "No," I said quietly. "I'm not." Her face hardened, charm vanishing like a switched-off light. "After everything I did for you, I raised you, Lily." "You exploited me," I corrected her. "You taught me what it means to be truly alone in the world. And for that particular education, I've arranged something in return." I handed her an envelope from my desk. Inside was a check, enough money for 6 months' rent on a modest apartment, plus expenses to get established. Her hands trembled as she held it. "What is this?" "Hush money." "It's a door," I replied. "Not back into my life, but forward into yours. A chance to build something for yourself, the way I had to." "I don't want your charity," she snapped, pride momentarily overcoming desperation. "It's not charity. It's closure." She looked down at the check, then back at me, calculation returning to her eyes. "This isn't even a fraction of what you have. What your father would have wanted me to have." "My father made his choice 15 years ago what he stood by while you charged his daughter rent," I said calmly. "I've made mine." That night, Vanessa stayed in the guest house, alone with her thoughts and the sound of waves crashing below. In the morning, I had my driver bring her suitcase to the main house, where breakfast waited on the terrace. She emerged looking smaller somehow, the fight gone from her posture. "The driver will take you wherever you need to go," I said, pouring coffee. "I've booked you a hotel for 2 weeks. The rest is up to you." She hesitated, then sat opposite me. "You know, you're more like me than you think." This calculated revenge. "This isn't revenge, Vanessa," I interrupted softly. "If it were, I would have turned you away at the gate. This is mercy, something you never taught me." We finished breakfast in silence. When the time came, I walked her to the waiting car. "You taught me self-reliance by trying to break me," I said as the driver loaded her suitcase. "But this house, this life, you don't get a piece of it just because you're drowning now." She paused before getting into the car. "He loved you, you know. Your father. At the end, he regretted so much." "I hope that's true," I said, and meant it. I watched the car disappear down my long driveway, through the gates that would now remain closed to her forever. Then I turned and walked back inside, not with triumph or bitterness, but with a strange, quiet peace. On my terrace, coffee in hand, I watched the waves roll in, endless and ancient. I had survived Vanessa. I had built a life she could never imagine. And most importantly, I had become nothing like the woman who had tried to destroy me. That, more than all the money and success, was my greatest victory.